You're listening to the Marketing Funnel Show, episode number 23. Today on the pod, I'm excited to introduce you to James Ranson, the Master Wordsmith. And we're talking about his quiz funnel. Welcome to the Marketing Funnel Show. I'm your host, Michelle Evans, and this is the podcast for coaches, experts, and online business owners to learn how to go from simply surviving to sold out using the power of marketing funnels. All right, let's jump into today's show. Hey, welcome to today's show. I am so excited today to bring you James Ranson, the Master Wordsmith. So James and I met like maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. We were both students of another mentor, and we connected in that program and have just stayed connected over the years because James, he doesn't love marketing, but him and I have always connected over marketing. And he reached out a while back and he said, Michelle, I really am committed to getting my marketing going this year. And he decided to join Build Your Funnel Bootcamp. And as we were going back and forth in Build Your Funnel Bootcamp, deciding on which funnel was the right one for James, we decided that the quiz funnel was right. Because for James has sort of a complicated offering. He's extraordinarily skilled at what he does, and he needs people who are ready to have a conversation about, what they want. And quizzes really make sense because it's going to set people up to have the right conversation with James. But as you're going to hear during this interview, at first James is okay with the quiz, and then as he got thinking about it, he wasn't quite sure, and so we had to kind of work through some of his concerns. And I love that because I never, ever want to push somebody to do marketing that they're not comfortable with. I know I personally have had mentors in the past who've tried to turn me into clones of them, and I never, ever want to do that to somebody. However, in this case, I knew that a quiz was right for James, and so we just needed to work through some of his concerns, and I love that he brought those concerns to the forefront in this conversation because I think that a lot of times people have these concerns, but they're not always able to articulate them as well as James is, and James is he's a master writer. He's so good at what he does, so he's able to put words to things that a lot of times people aren't. And so I was glad that he wanted to do this interview because marketing isn't his favorite thing. He's much more into doing his craft, which he is an absolute master at. And, he's so much like almost all clients that I've ever worked with. They would rather be doing what they're really great at versus doing the marketing piece. But in the end, he came up with a really phenomenal quiz that really sets up the right conversation with his ideal clients. And I can't wait for you to hear just how this all unfolded and everything that he worked through. And one thing I always have appreciated about James is his 100% commitment to his own unvarnished truth. So you're going to hear it all in this interview, and I can't wait for you to dive in. So let's go.
All right, James, thanks for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, you're so welcome. Really excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, because you're new to my audience, I would love for you to just take a few minutes to let us know what your business is, kind of what you're about, and then we can dive into some more specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, Michelle's audience. My name is James Ranson. I am the Master Wordsmith. I'm a Wall Street Journal best-selling editor, book coach, ghostwriter. I help entrepreneurs, consultants, coaches, speakers, thought leaders grow their authority and build their businesses by writing high-quality books.
Yeah, and by high-quality books, I mean, I know you have a lot opinions about this because we've known each other for a while. But, high quality books, what you mean is you're not, take 10 blog posts and turn them into a book and call it a bestseller, right?
Exactly. There's really two sides to that process. There is the creating something that gives your audience an immense amount of value such that they will turn around and look at you as the person they want to work with or book to speak on their stage, or just as someone who really knows what the heck they're talking about in that field. And then also that when it does get awards, acclaim, notoriety, recognition of any kind, that it actually deserves it. And it's not just something that is like, I threw it up on Amazon and then did a whole bunch of hacks and tricks to make it look more important or more influential than it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know one of the things that you really stand for is creating a long-term business asset that
Absolutely.
does have impact. Yeah.
Absolutely. A book is an asset that you will be able to leverage multiple ways for multiple decades.
Yeah. Okay. So with that sort of as the backdrop, and you call yourself the Master Wordsmith, which I love. And I know people who've gone through Build Your Funnel Bootcamp, I know that they've made use of your Master Wordsmithness, which is not a word.
Yeah, I'll let it slide. But we had some fun with that in the group, definitely.
Yeah. So can you help me understand, because I know since we've known each other for about 2.5 years or so?
About that, yeah.
I know a bit about your journey in trying to get people to understand what you're about and get your marketing message out there and really set yourself apart from the market. I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about some things that you have tried and just the journey that you've gone on to establish your business and get it known out there in the market.
Sure. So I began my business doing a lot of freelance article writing, and I got into freelance editing just by knowing a couple people who needed help with their books, and just sort of built things up from there. A lot of that has been very organic. It's been very word of mouth centric. And I love word of mouth. Word of mouth is one of my favorite things in the world, in all honesty, but it isn't always as reliable as we want it to be. So I think one of the mistakes that I have made in working in my business, I've been doing this almost 4 years now, has been relying on word of mouth a little bit too much. And so when that comes in, when that works out, it almost always works out really well. But there are times in between when it's working out really well, when it's not really working at all. And that's one of the reasons that I've more recently started to look at, other means of marketing and other ways to be more visible and so forth. And one particular leg of this journey is the one that connected us. We, for those of you who don't know, which maybe many of you, Michelle and I met in a high-level speaking mastermind run by a couple of the premier speakers in the world, which is cool. We learned some good stuff from them. But one of the things that we learned in this was that neither of us really wanted to speak first and build our business second. And I think that was one of the things that this particular mastermind really wanted to focus on. I remember I got to work fairly closely with one of these very high-level speakers who was running the program. And one of the things this person told me was essentially that my niche as a book-specific expert was too niche to be a keynote speaker, and that I needed to change the direction of my business and adopt a much broader topic and expertise that people who didn't necessarily want to write a book, or at least didn't want to write one right now, could more easily relate to. And then, work backwards from there to get book clients sort of after the fact. And, I did not try to do that as hard as I could have, but I did try. And it didn't feel right for me. It didn't feel natural, even after, working closely with this particular mentor and getting very excited about some of the things that could have happened from there. Ultimately, that's not how I wanted to build my authority or my visibility, because it would mean that I kind of have to start out by being something that I'm not. I am not someone who advises businesses on how to be more effective. I'm not someone who coaches CEOs on how to run their organizations better. There are lots of great people who do that. I am not one of them. and there is sort of some understanding as I stepped back from that particular area of focus, that instead of going super broad toward things that anybody could work with, I actually wanted to do the opposite. I wanted to go even further into the, if you want to write a quality book, I am your guy level. And that's sort of what brought you and Michelle, back to talking about some of these things.
Yeah. And I think even though for both of us, that high level mastermind kind of showed us what we didn't want, sometimes that's valuable.
It absolutely is.
It kind of digs your heels into, no, actually, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And so what is it that you really wanted? Like, did you get really clear on that?
Yeah, I want to work with people who are so clear that they are going to write an amazing book that showcases their expertise to the people who can't wait to hear that expertise from them, and just have some block or some hole or some missing piece that is preventing them from either doing it in the first place or doing it as well as they would like to do it.
Yeah.
And that's as deep as I've ever gone in niching down in my business, because I know and maybe some of the listeners will know a bit about the self-publishing industry. There's a lot in there that is broad enough to say, whoever you are, you can write this book for your business in 90 days or in a weekend or whatever it is. And or you can just hire somebody to write it for you according to some of these systems. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I can work with people in either of those systems if I want to, but as I've learned about them more and about myself more, what I've discovered is that the people I really want to work with are the ones for whom those one-size-fits-all, universal, serving everybody systems don't feel right.
And I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but what about those doesn't feel right to you?
One big thing is that a lot of them seem very one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you need a system. Everyone needs a system. Not knocking systems. Systems are fine. I have systems. I would probably go crazy if I didn't have systems. But there is a big difference between plugging yourself into a system that someone else has designed without you in mind, and partnering with someone who is going to take the time to learn who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you're the right person to do it, and how best you can do it.
Yeah.
There's a world of difference between those two things. And, maybe 80 or 90% of the world wants to do the first one. That's fine. There are plenty of places they can go. I want to work with the remaining 10 or 20% who don't want to go those places.
Yeah, and I think it comes from both of us being in that mastermind where we were trying to be forced to become somebody that we weren't.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And for me, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but for me, systems give us guardrails. Like they help us move forward and say, okay, we need to do certain things to move forward. Like we need to be visible. People need to know about us. But within being visible, there's a lot of choices we can make.
Absolutely.
So, are we better being visible on podcasts, on stages, one-on-one? Like how are we best being visible? Video, whatever.
Absolutely.
There's lots of ways.
There are. And along a similar line, if you are wanting to create a high quality book, there are a number of different ways that could work for you. And that could mean that you do work with a ghostwriter. who works very closely with you to make sure that your ideas come out in the way that it should be. It could mean that you work with a book coach who, guides you through a lot of the strategy process and then holds you accountable to do the actual writing yourself. Even within that, there's a difference between working with an author, or heck, being an author who really needs help with strategic direction versus one who really needs help just getting their ideas out of their head versus someone who just doesn't know where to start.
Yep. Yes, and you've worked with the spectrum, and you've done this too. Like, you've written books too, so you've been on all sides of the equation.
Right.
So help me understand, as you were thinking about, because you joined Build Your Funnel Bootcamp, so you decided, okay, I'm gonna try another system, obviously.
Yep.
So what was it about building a funnel? Like, what was a goal for you about building a funnel, or what was interesting for you about that? Because it is a system, and you just came out of something that felt like it was trying to plug you into a system that didn't feel right for you. So I'm interested to know, from your perspective, what felt okay about this system?
Well, the first thing is that you're the one running it. And I mean, I'm going to come back to this, and as we continue talking about this, one of the things that you have over people we both have already worked with is that you literally took a whole lot of time to get to know me and to connect with me and to understand me and to help me understand myself, so that when we did start talking about working together, it was very much a sense of, how can I, Michelle, you take this system that I have and make sure that it works for you, rather than how can I get you to cram yourself into my system.
Yeah.
So that's huge. Just the amount of time and understanding and connection that you were willing to put into me before we even ever started talking about working together was huge, first of all. Second of all, while this is a system, it is a system that is set up to be individualized very easily. Now, obviously you know this because you designed it, but people listening who don't know the Build Your Funnel Bootcamp, there's not one funnel in there. There are 5.
Yeah.
5 or 6.
5,
More
yeah.
5, okay. There are several. And each of them can be, not only can each one be customized, even further than that, each one serves a slightly different purpose. So as an example, one of my goals was to just connect with more people who are approaching the book process from, I want to work with a book coach, but I don't entirely know how to do that yet, or what my issue is, or that they would help me solve. So what I was able to do was to take one of the funnels, the quiz funnel, and then customize that so that 4 different people could take that quiz and still get some value that they really need out of it, even if they are struggling with different issues or approaching the book creation process from a completely different area.
Well, and thank you for that. And customization and making marketing work for you is actually something that is really important to me, because I don't think marketing will ever work. If I told you, James, you have to do marketing just like I do, it will never work for you, because you're not me.
Yeah.
And I'm not you, so I can't do it like you either. So thank you for that. The second thing is, what was important to, like, why did you choose the quiz funnel, first of all? And then second of all, what was important to you about having these different outcomes for people?
Yeah. So I actually, when I was first looking at this, I was thinking that I was not going to use the quiz funnel. I was going to use a different one. I was going to use a discovery call funnel, which is essentially, getting people to get on the phone with me. And I wanted to do that because I'm really good once I get on the phone with people. It's just getting them to that point that has been traditionally challenging. So when I started to look into that, what I started to realize was that I was needing to subdivide all of the different people that might want to get on the phone with me because they'd be getting on the phone with me for different reasons. Firstly, there are 3 different services that I offer. I offer book coaching. I also offer editing, and I offer ghostwriting. Those are all book-related services, but they're very different, and different people will need them at different times for different reasons. So my first thought was, okay, I really need to have 3 different discovery call funnels. And and then that started getting really complex. And I was like, wait a minute.
And I said, time out.
Yeah, no, and yeah, you called me on that too. One at a time, James, yeah. One at a time. So there's that. But then when I sort of got to that, I then decided, okay, I tend to get more editing and ghostwriting clients from word of mouth. Book coaching is the one that I want to build up the most, and also the one that tends to happen the least organically of the 3. So that's what I want to focus on. And then I'm still thinking, okay, I want discovery calls for book coaching projects. Mm-hmm. And then I started to think about, okay, why is somebody going to get on the phone with me to talk about book coaching? And the reasons that I came up with were still pretty different, because there are people who, like I started to talk about earlier, there are people who maybe just don't know where to start and want some initial guidance on how to get going. There are people who may have already started but don't feel like it's going as well. There are people who have tons and tons and tons of ideas but for whatever reason just can't write them down. And there are people who feel really isolated in the process. Like they know everything they're supposed to do and they're doing it, but they know it could be even better if they have the right person to work with, and other things along those lines. So the more I thought about this and the more we talked about this, the more sense it made to have something put in place that could speak to all of those people without literally being like a 30-page piece of content that they had to sift through to find where they fit in. Because they're not going to want to read that, and I didn't want to write that. And that's when we started talking about switching things over to the quiz.
And I know, at first you were like, okay, I could see a quiz, and then some doubts started creeping in. So I would love you to talk about there were some. Yeah. And so I want you to be really honest with this, because sometimes people out there portray like making funnels as just this easy, like just slam it together, you put it out there and you're ready to go. And I really want people to know, like, this is a process that you have to go through of really thinking about what is it that you need your audience to be ready for? What's the conversation you need them to be ready for? So what were some of your concerns that came up as you started thinking about this quiz?
Well, one of the big ones was, this is a quiz. Don't people like go to BuzzFeed and Mashable and stumble upon to like you get quizzes and then they find out like, what's your favorite color for real, and what does that say about you, and like what's your favorite Star Wars character and stuff like that. And I was like, people are totally going to be like, they're not going to take this seriously,
right?
And I kind of had to fight my way through that a little bit. And what I realized, sort of 2 things, and you helped me through this quite a bit. I realized a couple things about that. Firstly, that by asking questions and by getting people to ask themselves questions, I can connect with them a lot more strongly than just by throwing content at them. And that is at least worth trying. And that is worth, putting my effort into doing this. And then the second thing that I realized is, just because people have a particular view of some quizzes doesn't mean that I have to take that view when I put the quiz forward to them. And that actually ended up turning into a really fun exercise for me, where I took the splash page, the first page of my quiz, and used it to completely make fun of the fact that I'm giving people a quiz.
I know, and I loved it. When I read it, I was like, oh my God, I love that you called this out. It was awesome. Yeah. In fact, I want to link to it go for it. That's listening to the podcast. I want to link to it because first of all, I loved that you brought this up, because it could have been a blocker. Like, you could have just said, Michelle and I agree that this is the right funnel for me, but I have these things and I don't want to bring it up. You brought it up. We worked through it.
Yep.
But then you kind of poked fun at it in a really brand appropriate way. Like, this is appropriate for your brand to be like this, to call BS on things.
Yeah, because that is something I do.
Yes. Yeah, it's really appropriate for your brand and who you are. And when I read it on your opt-in page, I was like, oh my God, this is so perfect. And I told you, I was like, yes, like, you need to do this because it's going to connect with your audience. So anyway, I will link to that because I want people
absolutely
to see what this looks like in real life.
Yeah. And I'm getting to that point felt really good. Getting to that point, it felt, you use the words brand appropriate, and I would supplement that by saying it felt very natural. It felt very authentic, and it didn't feel like I was trying to push something that didn't work that wasn't right for me.
Right.
And then, and also, just to be fair, this is not a, yes, this is a multiple choice quiz, but this is not a thoughtless, like, randomly pick something quiz. There are 7 questions, and each one of them is designed to make you think about how you work and what your goals are and what you want out of this book process and what maybe you're running into that's problematic, so that by the time, it maybe take you 10 minutes to get through, but by the time you do, you will have already started thinking about, okay, what do I really need here? And what can I really do to keep moving forward and make this a really good thing? Whether that ends up being that you work with me, or that you just take this insight and be like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Let me run with it.
And this is on purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
It's something that I teach in the course. That's called pre-framing. It's getting people ready for the conversation you ultimately want them to have. And a lot of times where all of our marketing falls down is that we try to jump from, hey, it's nice to meet you, to, hey, let's have the sales conversation. And we skip over this bridge where we need to do that pre-framing. And those questions are a perfect place to start that pre-framing, because they've already asked and answered these questions, and they've already taken themselves down this road, and they're in a much better place to say, yeah, I actually really want to have this conversation with you, James. Yeah. And it's a better conversation too, because they already know what those pain points are.
Yeah. And the pain points in particular, I know that's something that you talk a lot about, especially in, like, the research sections of the bootcamp course, and also in just different conversations that we have to refine things. There are a number of pain points built into both this quiz and the results that you can get from it that ideally resonate with whichever author type or whichever particular block that you are or that you have. Whether that is, I don't have any problem sitting down and writing, but I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, or whether that is, I have 1,000 ideas, but I can't make myself write them down, or anywhere in between.
Yeah. And I know you did the funnel persuasion playbook, where you went through and you found all the pains and the stories that people have in their heads and all, the things. And then when I went through and took a look at not only the questions you did, but the emails that you wrote afterwards to really bolster up why it's so important that they have a conversation with you, I could see where the research that you did in your funnel persuasion playbook really came through in the questions, in the emails, and just led beautifully into a conversation with you. Did it feel easier to put that together once you were clear on what those pains were?
Yeah, that definitely helped. And I mean, okay, so I have to admit that there's one hack that I use, which is just that I'm already a writer.
Right.
And that helps a lot.
Yeah.
And, not everybody will necessarily be able to do what we're talking about as easily as I did. And actually, as you mentioned, there were a number of people in the community who were having a few issues around that, who actually reached out either in the group or specifically to me to say, hey, I have a question about this writing thing, can you help? And and of course I'm happy to. So that is my hack. If there's any hack that I have, that's it. But what I will say is, even with what I already knew about my own industry, which is a lot, being able to get even clearer on some of the stories, some of the issues, some of the problems that the people I want to work with or could work with are running into that other people like me are using to attract them, that allowed me to get a lot clearer on, okay, this is the structure of the email sequence that I want to use. Like, I want to have, these are the really good things about the author type that you are. And then this is the problem that you run into, and here's the key to fixing that problem. And here's a case study of how that problem was fixed, and so on. I mean, I'm not going to give everything away, but but it allowed me to structure it in a way that I felt that felt really good for me, and that touched on a lot of different points within that I think the people that I really want to work with and who would do well and enjoy working with me would relate to.
Yeah. So now that you have your funnel up and running, how do you feel about driving, people to it and driving traffic to it?
I'm going to be honest, it still scares me. And it's probably going to keep scaring me for a while until I just do more of it. Mm-hmm. My projects in this area at this point are twofold. One is pitching podcasts, and that right now is involving a lot of podcast research and figuring out, what makes sense to do, and where do I fit into that. That's very new. It's a learning process, but it is something that I'm challenging myself to move forward on. And then the other one is just getting some extra money together so I can start running Facebook ads.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that once it's in place and it's there, that everything that you do to drive traffic there is catching that. So you're not having to keep recreating the wheel, which I love.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we were talking earlier about how a book is an asset. A funnel is an asset also. It's a digital asset. It's smaller. It doesn't work exactly the same way, but this is something that I can use for months and years to come, and I plan to. So.
Yeah, for sure. I know I've had funnels that, if I've updated my branding, I've updated it, but the bones of it have stayed the same for quite a while. And
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so last question that I have for you. If you were talking to a friend or a colleague who was in a situation like you were before you joined, what's something that you would say to them as they were thinking about joining Build Your Funnel Bootcamp?
If you can work with Michelle, work with Michelle.
Thanks.
No, I'm serious. No, the course is fine. The course is good. There's a lot of good information in it. And at base, it is a course. The main thing that people get out of this thing is that they get access to you. They get to ask you questions. They get to pick your brain. They get to have you call them on their BS. They get to have all of the expertise that you bring to the table, and all of that support around whatever they're doing with watching the videos and building funnels and engaging in the community. You are the foundation that makes it all work. And that is, you're welcome. And I would say, again, going back to what I said earlier about how much time and dedication you put into the success of the people that you work with, that is worth more than several times what you're currently charging for this bootcamp. So if whoever you are, if you can do this, if you have a chance to work with Michelle, go work with Michelle, and you will get so much more than you would out of just trying to figure out any of this by yourself. Because let's be real, most of the information is out there. If you look hard enough, you can find it. But the information plus the package of having the support and the access from Michelle, that's where you're going to get the real value out of this. So go for that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I do call people on their BS. Like James has said it a few times in this interview. I'm pretty good at calling that. But I do it with love and with support, and I don't just say, like, that's BS. I say, let's work through it, right?
Yeah, and she doesn't force people to fit into, boxes that they don't fit into.
Yeah. Yeah. Because my number one thing is always help me understand what the real concern is here.
Yep.
Like, let's dive deep into what's really going on, and then let's figure out, what we can do to really achieve the goal that you want, for sure.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
thank you so much. If people want to find out more about you and about the Master Wordsmith that you are, where should they go to see that quiz that you put together and to find out more about your services?
Sure. So jamesranson.com. I've like centralized everything at jamesranson.com. It used to kind of be all over the place. That is where you can see the quizzes on there. I think it's jamesranson.com/your author type. There's probably going to be some dashes in there. We'll link in the description for you guys. That's where you can see the quiz, but you can also see testimonials of people who have worked with me. You can see some of the books I've worked on. You can see my most recent book, which came out in August of 2017. And as this year goes forward, you will also see updates from the next book that I'm working on, which is, excuse me, which is called Don't Write a Crappy Book. So that's going to be a lot.
Which I love. I can't wait for that one to come out. It's so on brand for you.
I'm really excited. Did I tell you this? I interviewed 26 people for that book who are all, successful authors, editors, or book professionals in some other way, people who own their own publishing companies, all sorts of stuff like that. And so not only is it not just going to be me shouting from a soapbox, it's going to have a huge amount of value for anybody who wants to make sure that the book they write is good.
I love it. All right, so we'll link up to all that stuff. I want to thank you for your time today, James, and I really look forward to seeing everything that comes out of your Master Wordsmith bookshop.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me, Michelle. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks.
James, thank you so much for sharing your story. So if you'd like to jump on over and take James's quiz and learn about your author style, or learn more about his work, you can visit him at jamesranson.com or just visit michellelevans.com/23, and I'll link to his website and the quiz directly in today's show notes. So you can jump on over and check the whole thing out. So want to know which marketing funnel is right for you and your business? I have created a totally free and easy quiz to help you figure that out. Head on over to today's show notes at themarketingfunnelshow.com/23, and in less than 5 minutes, you're going to know exactly which funnel is right for you. All right, I will see you next week as we dive even further into more marketing funnel goodness. See you then.